So first of
Okay.
all, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it because I know you're very busy. So I appreciate your time. For the
No,
people,
you're welcome.
for the people that are listening, just explain a little bit who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive straight into it.
Yeah, I'm Phil Hawkins. I'm a director. I've been directing over a decade, but it's probably about 13 odd years now. And a lot of commercials, and done 5 feature films, and recently done a crazy fan film, which kind of mashes up Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and a film called Star Wars Origins, which took me 3 years to make. And yeah, that's me. Born in Manchester,
Hey,
northern
that's
lad.
close to me. Far from
uh,
me.
and where are you?
I'm based in Bradford, like Bradford
Okay.
Leeds area. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, yeah.
minutes.
I've done a bunch in Bradford and Leeds. Done a lot of work up there. So yeah. That's me in a very quick
In a
nutshell.
nutshell. Awesome. I want to talk about, first of all, how you got into filmmaking. Was it something that as a child you was inspired by, or was it something that came later on in the years?
Yeah, it was really, really young. So I saw Jurassic Park in 1993, and God, I was like Tim's age in the film, and it absolutely blew me away. And so that, like, I knew it wasn't real because I was watching a movie,
Yeah,
but I was immersed, and I had no clue how they were creating these things. Those dinosaurs were real.
yeah,
I just became obsessed with pouring over behind the scenes photos and anything you get your hands on, because obviously this is just being able to Google it, and behind the scenes videos, all this stuff.
yeah.
So, and just being amazed by the fact that people did this for a job and as a living. And obviously Star Wars is a huge influence on me, seeing that for the first time. So I just started to sort of copy them, really. I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, okay, I can make that. So I got my mates together and a camera, and we just started shooting these, funny enough, like fan films. I made like X-Files stuff. I made like a Matrix like rip off. I made all this kind of stuff, just trying to copy what I'd seen to try and figure
Yeah.
out how they did it. And then that was almost a kind of unofficial film school for me. And I just carried on making shorts, and then kind of got into the industry that way, really.
But did you not go to film school? Was that just like through experience, and then you all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but through the hard work, got into the film industry that way, or did you actually do education?
Yeah, I went to sixth form college in Manchester, and that was the first time I'd studied like media and
Yeah.
film. And I was probably naive because I thought, because I'd been making, I think I made my first short when I was like 11.
Wow.
So, I've been making like, they weren't good. Don't get me wrong. These are not good films, right? But I was trying to make stuff. So I sort of had 5 years by that point, like my whole high school years of making films.
Yeah.
So I thought when I go to college, I'd be surrounded by all these other people that have been making all these films, and it wasn't quite the case.
Yeah.
So as much as the theory side was interesting, the practical side, I kind of felt like I had a bit of a handle on, albeit I still got a lot to learn. I'm still learning to this day. But I think that's when I sort of decided to take a year out before uni and try and get some professional experience or any experience working on other people's sets.
Yeah.
So I realized like I'd only ever worked on stuff I'd made, and obviously that's very different to a proper set.
Yeah.
And then I realized how much I didn't know. And funny enough, it was from making a short film that was screening at the BBC in Manchester, which is completely knocked down to the spin now. But we had this screening of a film, of my short film there, and someone else was screening their short, and they happened to be working a commercial the next day, and we're like, "Oh, do you fancy being a runner?" So I was like, "Yeah." And then that was the start of a long relationship working with that production company, and kind of working up the rungs.
Yeah.
So you could say I'm still on my year out because I never actually made it to uni.
Yeah.
And and I also got rejected from film school as well. So rejection is not the end of everything. You know, you just kind of got to
100%.
want it enough to not take no for an answer. You know.
100%. So when was it when you kind of, obviously you've been doing it from, well, when you was 11, but when was it when you really thought, well, I can actually make a career from this? Because I can imagine it was different back then than it was now, because the opportunities have changed dramatically. There's so much more opportunities now. Obviously, it's still a very tough industry, but there's just
Yeah.
more access. So when was it when you first thought, all right, I can do this and get more serious with it?
Um, I took myself pretty bloody seriously as an 11-year-old, to be very honest. Um, I, my family's not in the industry. I,
Yeah,
grew up, um, you know, uh, in a council house in Manchester. Like, I wasn't surrounded by filmmakers or artists or, anything like that. So I feel like someone really clever said something the other day. It's like this amazing businesswoman. The founder of Not in the High Street, an amazing kind of entrepreneur. She was saying it's very interesting that naivety is like an armor, because the more you know, almost weakens you, because like, oh, I can't really say that, I can't pick up that phone, or it's like can't. But actually, when you're naive, you're just like, well, why can't I write a letter to Spielberg and get a job? Why can't I did it? And I think I had that armor because I was just convinced I was going to be a director.
yeah,
And the more people said, Phil, maybe you've got half a brain, maybe you should think about a proper job. As I in like growing up, you couldn't deny the passion I had for making short films. And I had some wonderful supportive teachers in high school that stayed late, so I could film after school with the school's kind of equipment, and people that I'm forever indebted to, that supported me early on to make these short films I was making to try and grow. I think when I think that running job, really, that one after I did the short film, and that was my first it's almost like my first. I'd been on a few sets before, but it was all unpaid, no paid, all this stuff. And because I got like a paycheck to be a runner, I was like, okay, maybe if I can get another paycheck next week or the week after, then maybe I can live and I can grow. And it started to become making money from doing it. And it grew that way. But yeah, I took it all very seriously as I started off. So
it's great though. It's great. Like 11 years old, that itself is amazing. It's similar story to what you said about people not believing in you, people think you're crazy. But I used to be a dancer, so obviously coming from a similar area in a rough area and stuff like that, growing up with these beliefs that I'm going to be a dancer, I'm going to be on stage dancing with I don't know, some big star, things like that, and parents usually are just like they don't get it, and then through that I kind of channeled into filmmaking. I only started when I was 16, so I feel like I'm still a baby to this. So that's why I wanted to do this podcast, to kind of pick up people's brains. I think it's brilliant.
No, it's cool.
Do
And
that.
we all feel like babies. Honestly,
Yeah.
We all feel like we're like it's that pretender syndrome, right? Because it's that never goes away. With how many, I don't know, hours, days, months I've spent on set directing experience, you still think, God, someone's going to find me out at some point that I don't actually know what I'm doing.
I think that's the beauty though of this of filmmaking, because you're always learning, and it's interesting. It's something that you cannot ever get bored of, because it's something you're always learning and evolving on. I just want to talk about running and how the experience was for you. Was that like a really big insight in terms of being on set, or did you kind of not see enough, or how did you go about it? Because I know a lot of people have done running jobs and they're like, oh, it's not where it is. But for me, it's like, it's what you do with it. So if you're a runner,
100%,
you then also want to talk to people, get to know people, network. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that, and how your experience as a runner was in terms of networking and things.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really clever way of putting it. It's like it is about what you bring to it, because I think there's a lot of people, or there's a kind of person that maybe wants everything on a plate, and everything now given to you. And if that's you, you're not going to survive in this industry. Like, it's not going to happen. Yes, you're doing the menial tasks, right? You're standing in the pouring rain with a high-vis jacket, telling the public not to walk around a corner, all day, every day, or you're taking the bins out, or you're making tea, like whatever. The job, obviously the hours are difficult, and stuff like that, but the actual things you're doing aren't particularly difficult, right?
Yeah.
What you make of those things. When I walked on that set, and it wasn't a particularly big commercial, but to me it was huge. I was just like, who are I don't understand who all those people are, but I know this feels like home, right? This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to be the best flipping runner on the planet, right? There's no way they're not going to want to rehire me. There's nothing too beneath me to do. I'm going to be there first and there last. Like, I'm going to be that person, because I know that these are the people I want to engage with, talk to. And if I can be good at what I do so people notice, and that's not making a cent of anything, it's just getting on with the job, and people see that you're committed and passionate and enthusiastic, that you're going to get called back. And I got so much work running, because it was like Phil's, and also always dressed well, and like I always wore a shirt, and and stuff like this, and that made producers and things put me close to the client, because I was more sort of presentable. And then when I was closer to the clients, I was close to the director, and like I could overhear those conversations, and just points where, like, you'd be on a location and they put me like in the client tent, for example, and you'd almost be invisible to them, but you're definitely, the things they're saying are not invisible. Like, you can hear everything, like stuff the director can't hear. You're like, oh crap, this is how they talk about people behind, or that's not working, or you see directors coming in, who you have a huge respect for, because you're like, oh, how did you get to this point? And you realize they're human and they're figuring it out, and everyone's trying to figure this out as well.
It's very true.
So I would say running is like the best lens, because you're invisible in a way, and once you start to go up the ranks, your job becomes more skilled and more focused and almost more demanding. Not to say running is demanding, it really is, but I know as I grew up the ranks, I spent less and less time listening. So now, if you said to me, oh, we're shooting, like the other day, God, like just before lockdown, obviously, a DP friend of mine was shooting quite a big drama, and Sky thing, and he was like, and we wasn't shooting far from my house. So I'll come down and just, I'm not seen for a while, I'll say hi. Brilliant, just great to walk in a set. I'm not waiting on a set for ages where I wasn't in control or had a job. Just great to just sit around and just have a look and just have a little nosy, and like, it just brilliant. Yeah. So running is really, really important. And if you're lazy about it, or you feel it's beneath you, or, and then you get the attention, because then certain producers are like, you get talking to them, like, I heard you were shooting a film last weekend, or you made some short, can I see a short? You're like, well, yeah, okay. And then, and then that led to other things, and eventually led to my first directing job, and it was just being the best you can be with that, because there are so many people trying to do it that don't waste it.
100%.
And it's crazy to me that there are people out there like that. But I was doing a job, and maybe it's a little bit north-south divide, and there is a real issue with class and different, getting into film, especially in the South, because
Yeah.
you do so much work for expenses or for free, then how the hell are you supposed to live in London and get these opportunities if you're not from a certain economic background, which I certainly wasn't, you know, and that's a whole other debate that needs to be sorted. But I remember some very privileged kid came up to me on a set and said, "Oh, tomorrow it's a bit early. Can I come in later?" Like, firstly, I mean, now it angers me. I don't know how to. I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked, and I was like, "Do you realise that in my phone right now, my emails, I could fill your position like that in a heartbeat tomorrow, and someone would turn them and go, 'Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity,' you know, and you're asking me whether you want to come in later because it was inconvenient for you." I'm just like, are you having a laugh, mate? Seriously. Yeah. But there are people out there like that, and I just think, wow. Oh, sorry, rant over, but I think it's really important. It's really important.
And it's kind of like you answer my question a little bit, because I wanted to talk a little bit about mindset, because over this past year I've been doing like a mindset development course, and I think mindset's so important, which I think people don't kind of get it, which is completely fine, because it's how you've been brought up at the end of the day, and everyone takes life differently and learns at a different rate. But how do you, as a director, or just in general, use your mindset in a positive way, or how do you even use it in terms of filmmaking? Because I can imagine you have to have a great mindset in order to make things work or to keep everyone alive.
Yeah, do you mean mindset in terms of attitude?
More tailored towards that. It is quite a broad question, I guess, but yeah.
No, it's interesting. There's different facets to it, and I think it's a really important thing to address, because I think there's a, not to sound, I say a broader thing. I'm not generalizing because it's an important thing, but I think with Instagram and Twitter and all this stuff, like, people only see the successes, and it's really important to know that it's okay to fail, you know, and you do. I've made some horrible stuff, and I've made stuff that I got paid to make horrible stuff. Things that just haven't worked out, or, you know, and you've tried the best to deliver the thing that someone wants, or you know, the idea's been diluted, or it doesn't happen very often, you know, because I've got enough experience now to be able to try and quash or protect that thing, or be very realistic about what's entailed and what you can create. But certain, like, you know, like I'm talking about, you know, you're trying to shoot on a beach and it's a sunny scene and it absolutely hammers down with rain. Like, it's just, you know, it's like, you're just like, well, what are you supposed to do here? Like, I've got some tricks, but I can't control the weather, you know? Or, you know, on the other side of, like, just rejection, like making films, sending to film festivals, never getting to film festivals, never getting, you know, stuff like this. Like, everyone gets rejection. I get rejection now, you know? Like, it's not as if, oh, you're a director, so therefore everything's easy. It's not. It's hard. It's hard. It gets harder as well. So I think that's important to know. And I guess you need to be strong enough. I think this is where passion comes in, because I love I don't even consider it a job, right? I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm obsessed with it. It's a passion. It's a calling, you know, and I'm very lucky to say I've found that calling, you know.
100%.
And so I know that even when things get quite difficult, that passion isn't going to go away very easily, if at all. And no one can take that away from you. And I think that's a thing you need to remember. And I say this from experience, because I, you know, made a bunch of feature films and you know, working and do other stuff. But my aspiration is to make the Jurassic Parks and the Star Warses. My aspiration is to make big studio movies. And, you know, and that's always been my goal. So it's like, well, am I close to that goal now? I am in a way, but I'm also further away from it because it's not happened yet.
Yeah.
So, 3 odd years ago, I had a whole series of quite big knocks career-wise.
Yeah.
Some not very nice things, some things that didn't go the way, financing, things that drops out, but some quite big opportunities that didn't quite happen. And
Mhm.
each one I was like, God, if one of these happens, this is big.
Yeah.
It didn't happen at all. And and that was heartbreaking. And I realized, I was like, I don't know whether I can do this anymore. Like, am I chasing this dream where actually am I living the inverted commas dream now, right? I'm directing and paid to direct. Like, commercials are great. Maybe that's not for me. So I almost for a while, just my own mental health, stopped trying to develop scripts and get features and all this stuff off the ground because it just felt unhealthy.
Yeah.
But that passion for storytelling didn't go away, and I wasn't a very nice person because there's nowhere for that passion to go. You can put it into commercial and things, but you're selling something. You're not, and you're using your directorial skills and storytelling stuff to do this thing, but essentially you're not making a feature film. You're not telling the story you want to tell. So that's where this origins came from, the short film, because I was like, right, I'm going to write something for me that's fun and see just to enjoy. And then I fell in love with it, and some people saw it, and my manager was like, man, if you make half this film, this will be pretty something.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, okay. Oh, maybe this is the thing I need to make to prove to myself that I can do it,
100%, yeah.
And I don't know whether you saw the film or
I've seen it. I want to touch on that later on, but yeah, it's so interesting to hear that, because with commercial work, do you tend to do narrative stuff for commercials? I know commercial is quite hard to get that across with some brands, but do you try to do that approach when you're working with brands?
Yeah, I mean, it's all storytelling. Whether it is literally telling a story with actors and dialogue, which I do a lot of, or it is more abstract, but you're still trying to tell some sort of story, because that's how we engage with things. If you just create something that's random, unless you're going for random's sake, but I don't make those sorts of ads. There needs to be some sort of connection, features have been great to inform the way you can tell something in 30 seconds, because actually it's really hard to tell something actually probably 25 seconds, because you've got an end frame at the end. And then that's not a long time to tell a story. So you kind of need to use every single bit of juice and skill in that time to do it.
100%.
So yeah, it's all storytelling. It's all the way to try and engage with people, regardless of what you're selling.
100%, that's true. It is true. I didn't see it like that, but the way that you put it, it does make sense.
For me, as my style of thing, I mean, there are some directs out there that's very much about image and it's more about montage, image-based commercials. I find, for me personally, the commercials, I can't remember what they're for, the ones that are more conceptual, whereas the ones that made me laugh or maybe took me on a journey or told me a little story or something are the ones that make me remember what the brand is.
Yeah, 100%.
So so from my perspective of commercial,
Yeah. So what's been the first, in terms of films, what was the breakthrough for you? Like what was either the short film or something you did that kind of got you into that barricade of, making your first feature?
What was it? So my first feature came about was from my college, actually. So I studied drama at college, and it was a Zavarian college in Russia, Manchester, and they had have an amazing drama department. And they got some money from the government or funding body or something to try and help other colleges be like them. So,
Okay.
and it was about classic Greek text. Was the thing of that kind of exam year.
Yeah.
And basically, it's like if you're trying to get students rather, to grasp Shakespeare, you can stick on Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, and you go, oh, okay, I get it. It's not as stuffy. I think a lot of like Greek tragedy and plays that on the page they're quite inaccessible, I think. So we made a basically filmed version of a play of the Trojan women, which we cleverly called The Women of Troy, and that was my first feature film. If you asked me before that whether my first feature film would have been an adaptation of a Greek tragedy, like I would have been like, "What?"
It's impressive.
But I grabbed it. I just grabbed it. We did it. It won some awards. But my real, I think careers have a series of like breaks, and I think it's hard to go, well, what's the one thing, because it all feeds into the next. I think you've just got to keep creating those little breaks that lead on to other breaks that lead on to other breaks. But I know, having done that and then having like a best director award at a festival and stuff, I then did the second feature film, which was an adaptation of a Philip Pullman novel called The Butterfly Tattoo, and that was then more me. I felt that was like my first feature in a way, because it was part romantic drama, part thriller, modern day, and it wasn't like theatrical, heavy stuff in that way. So that was like the first feature break, even though I'd kind of already made one, but it was very different. And then my first commercial came about is because I was running and I was working up the ranks and getting relationships and started working with this production company and assisting directors and all that stuff. And then this little ad for a charity came along that everyone else was sort of busy. People wanted to do it, but I think they were too busy to kind of fit it in. So I was like, well, I'll do it. And they're like, oh, great. Yeah, cool. So I went and did this really low budget charity ad that won some awards, and then that creative team and the agency were like, oh cool, well, we've got this other thing, do you want to look at that? And then you start building relationships, and then suddenly you had this kind of commercials directing reel that you can kind of develop and grow from there. So if anyone's like looking for that big break, I would say it doesn't arrive in a little package with a bow in it. I think it's I think getting that first running job is a huge break. I think, doing that, I think your career is a series of breaks,
100%.
as you go through.
100%. It's a process, and every single part is going to be different. I want to talk about, because I listened to your podcast with Film Riot.
Oh, yeah.
I found this very interesting, that you made a film within 48 hours. I want to talk about because I know you talked about the process and stuff on there. I kind of want to talk about the preparation and how you managed to get things sorted with that time frame, and then having that mindset to keep going, because I can imagine at some points you're like, oh, this is just, it's not going to happen. So I just want to kind of pick at your brain with that, and how you managed to actually create a 48-hour feature film. It's funny, it's a blur. Because again, I think it comes down to that naivety of like, no one's done it before, so I was just convinced we could. Like I was like, look, it's easy, right? We just get a load of cameras, we do it like theatre, and we shoot like long blocks of action, So we don't do like a 1 minute scene; we do 15 minutes. Yeah.
And then we do a few of those in the day, and then we've got that, and then we go outside, and we do the same outside, and we come together, and we've got a feature film. I know I make it sound really simple, but that's kind of where my head was. And albeit like practical reality set in, but then you're so far down the road by that point that I think that's why we got all that really fun cast, of like John Thompson and Roy Walker and like Leslie Joseph and all these like comedian, amazing kind of British actors to cameo and be a part of it, because they were like, this is crazy. This is, but it's so crazy it just might work, And they talked to me. I was like, cool, I do that. It's like, we just do this, you do this, and you're not going to be restricted by too much blocking or marks, and we're just going to really shoot it as if it's live kind of thing. And they're like, that sounds like a laugh, Like, I remember like Leslie Joseph came to do a role, play the mother of the one of the characters, and she's in it for 5 minutes, right? It's a brilliant, she turns up, there's a brilliant cameo, it's like 2 scenes, and she's in it for 5 minutes. So I remember the agent saying, I said, look, we only need her for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
We'll get a car, she'll come to set at this time, she'll shoot it, and she'll be gone. And I'm like, you say 3 hours, but like she's going to be there probably at 7 a.m. and it's probably going to be long. And what if you don't get round to her? And I'm like, well, if we don't get round to her, we don't have a film. Like literally, she's going to be on set probably the length of time it takes to like for her scenes to exist, and then she's done. And I don't think they quite believed it until she was there. She turned up, got into costume, then she was in the scene, and then she was like, okay, bye, Leslie, bye, and she's like, gone. It's like, whoa, I was just in a feature film.
I bet you were like, what's going on?
He was, but I think everyone was like, what? This is nuts. This is absolutely crazy. But we did it.
That itself is an achievement. Like, how did you find, because I know you had the multiple cameras doing different scenes, like as a take. How did you find that, like directing multiple, like so many different cameras at once on one scene? Was that difficult, or was that fairly simple?
It's never. It's a different mindset, because the more cameras you have, the less places you can put them, because they can see each other. You know? And on the outside of the house, that was less of a problem because they just look like news cameras. I mean, to the trained eye, you're like, well, why has a news guy got a red camera? But to the audience, like, who cares? Like, it's a camera, and there's news around, and well, inside the house is trickier because it's inside. It wasn't a set, and but I always set up had a series of rules, right? So I had 3 cameras on scene. Like, okay, well, one's doing the wide. That one's always going to follow that person. That one's going to follow that person. It's never that simple, but that's how you start out, and then you show the scene to the camera operators, and they're like, oh, okay, well, when he crosses around there, I'll be on the back of him, so maybe I should look at her, and then you, on that point, you change to him, and they find it. There's a magic, and they go with it. And some of it's rough and ready, but that's sort of the style of the film. Right? I want it to feel like a bit of a documentary kind of look to it. So, which was hard for me to start off with, because I'm very much about the shot and the image and what that relates to the audience and stuff like that. But that wasn't this film. This film was just supposed to be funny, and kind of a roller coaster ride, because you knew it was in real time, right? There's a ticking clock. So you're not looking for like a David Fincher-esque amazing tracking shot that takes 15, 20 takes to get right. Because you've got the performances, right? You're there to watch performances and the story, unfold. So it's just about knowing the style of the film. Like, you wouldn't shoot a horror movie like that, but you shoot a comedy satire like that, So that was best. Again, comes down to story. That was the best way to tell the story.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You got to work with the story, I guess, and the way that you've done it was great. I want to talk about the last showing, because I found that very interesting. I've only seen the trailer, I haven't actually seen the film, but just from the trailer you can already gauge what the film's going to be about.
Or can you? It's a musical. I'm only kidding.
It looks awesome. How was that directing that? Because it's all basically based in a cinema. Was that actually in a cinema first of all, or was that a set?
Yeah, yeah, real cinema. Yeah.
Oh,
So we shot it. It was all night shoots. So we would start shooting as the last crowd went out.
yeah.
And then we'd carry on shooting until we really had to get out of there for like the first morning. Screenings came in, and for people not knowing, that showing it stars Robert Englund, who was best known for being Freddy Krueger, and basically it's about he plays this kind of disgruntled former projectionist that is basically it's a comment on cinema, right? Like projectionist as an art form is gone. It's all digital. He's kind of lost his life's work, and it almost takes revenge on the younger generation by trapping a couple inside a cinema and basically shooting his own horror film, of which they are like unwilling stars. And also the twist is that he wants to be the hero of his own film, so he's like kind of psychologically manipulating them to turn against each other so he can save the day, kind of thing. So it's kind of a fun comment. It's meta, right? It's not as meta as like Scream is, but it's a comment on the horror genre and in that way. So, I mean, I did set out just to write a standard horror film. I was like, oh, wouldn't a horror film set in a cinema or the trapped in be fun? And it's not a necessarily like unique idea, because there have been other films set in cinemas and stuff. But I was like, well, if we can make it a comment on cinema itself, then that might be quite fun. And then it became more psychological thriller than horror as I became fascinated with the projectionist character as opposed to the couple. And that's maybe, on reflection, probably its weakest thing, is like I was so obsessed with the projectionist character that the other characters maybe less interesting. But and also I love 1 Hour Photo, so it was a little nod to 1 Hour Photo and the kind of Robin Williams performance in that. I mean, it's not even close to that movie because that's an amazing movie, but that was my inspiration for it.
It's great,
and it was an interesting visual challenge to use the same space in different ways so it doesn't get boring. But then again, story-wise, it's like, well, a lot of cinemas have lighting setups and rigs to kind of light, and it was like, well, if he has control over everything, he's going to want to light his horror film. So he's going to like relight things to make it feel like more of a horror film, so spaces change, and he's going to play with darkness and try and freak them out, and because that's all part of his scares that he wants for his film. So then it just started to inform itself, and my direct photography guy could add more, amazing guy, like he then came up with a way of rigging the cinema on desks, so we could light it in a more theatrical way as opposed to there's some conventional film lighting in there, but we were able to rig the entire cinema and then plug in a desk and then move lights around on rigs, as opposed, so people would be there all day watching their films, not realizing that this film's lit, ready for a film to start. And the weirdest thing was, obviously, there's kind of blood and things happen, and we'd be cleaning up blood as like kids come in for their like screening of Despicable Me at like 10 in the morning, and there's like Freddy Krueger, and a guy like covered in blood going, "Woody!" after a long night's filming. So.
How long did that take then, considering you had to work around, obviously, the business times as well? So how?
Yeah, I mean, View Cinemas. We shot at View Cinemas in Cheshire Oaks, in North Manchester, and North Manchester, north of England, and they were great. They were really, I mean, it's challenging from a logistical perspective, but they believed in it. They wanted to be part of it. They kind of gave us the run of the cinema. And we actually shot there, and we shot in another cinema as well, because ironically our film was about this character losing his livelihood because everything's going digital, and so when we recce'd, there was all these old 35mm projectors so we could show the start of his journey, but by the time he came to film, they'd all been ripped out. They're all digital, so we had to go to another place that still had them to film some of that stuff. So, yeah, it was 5 weeks of night shoots, I think, 4 weeks of night shoots. This is a few years ago now, so the details, but it was heavy going. Like 4 weeks of night, like all nights for a crew is hard. Is hard going. But it's the only way we could shoot it, and it was set at night, and there's no way we could afford to build a set that big.
Yeah.
And to use an abandoned cinema wouldn't be in the right vibe, you know. So yeah, we were just really lucky to, get that cinema.
Yeah, I think to be fair, it looks awesome. Now, I just want to touch upon the Star Wars because I've kept you for quite a while, which I appreciate.
Sorry, man.
I want to talk about, first of all, the writing process, because I can imagine that being a lengthy process itself. And then from there, what did you do to make it happen? And then how long did it actually take to, how long was you on set for to make it happen?
Oh, right. This is a 3-year saga. So I'll try not to let it take 3 years to explain it. No, so the writing, as I said before, came from that place of me just wanting to write again, because I'd not written for a while, I'd not made anything. I was like, and I obviously love Star Wars, Indiana Jones. I was kind of trying to reconnect really with the films I loved and the films I wanted to make. So I was like, well, I could write an action adventure film. It's not as if I'm going to make it, right? You write this thing and you're like, well, not going to, it's just fun, right? I'm just going to write this thing. And I'd always been fascinated by what the genius that George Lucas did was like create a world that felt really old, but it was futuristic. Like it was Star Wars would be very different if it was like clean and modern. It almost stands the test of time because it's old. It's supposed to be old. Yeah. It's like the Millennium Falcon is, I won't swear, effed up. Like that is a hunk of junk. Everything is old and dirty and has history to it. But then at the start of the film is like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So you're like, wait, so this all happened, but this happened somewhere else a long time ago, and we're the future. Like, wow, okay, that's weird. And then I was like, well, what? Then where are we? I've always wondered, like, are we part of this somehow? And wouldn't it be funny if we were part of this? And then it was just like, well, what if there's evidence of something Star Warsy on the planet? I'm just telling my thought process of how I came up with the idea. And then it was like, well, what's the best or worst time in history for that to be found? Maybe going spoiler light, depending on how this conversation goes, but hopefully people might want to watch it. It's like, well, obviously I love Indiana Jones, and if you set something during World War II, where if this is technology, if the Nazis got a hold of it, they could kind of win the war, then okay, that's the worst time for someone to discover X. And you're like, well, actually, this is quite Indiana Jonesy, and who would find that? Well, archaeologists. Okay, that's cool. So it just kind of started to snowball that, idea. And then the tricky thing is just making kind of, well, I mean, I love fan films. There's lots of them on the internet, some of them better than others, but they're an amazing proving ground. Amazing playing ground, because you don't have to prove yourself, but an opportunity to play in the toolbox of the things you love, so I've always watched fan films, and as I said earlier, like I started out making fan films, like that was my film school.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't want to do people fighting with lightsabers in the forest, like I didn't want to do a story about Darth Vader, or I didn't want to do like characters, because like with all the budget in the world, maybe not all the budget, well, still with all the budget in the world, doing an unofficial thing, you're not going to get Ewan McGregor, right? So you're not going to have the real Obi-Wan, right? So you're always going to get someone that's not quite Obi-Wan, and our jobs as filmmakers is to create suspension of disbelief, right? We create these worlds, these stories that people immerse themselves in, and we got to keep them there and keep them focused on our version of this world. And anything that comes in that makes them think they're watching a film spoils an emotional connection. So on fan films, I find it really hard to emotionally connect, albeit I can be amazed by cool flippy moves and fights and, cool special effects and stuff. But do I care? Not many fan films that make me care, because I'm always like, well, that's not Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
That's not a real Darth Vader. That's not Darth Vader's real, what you always like. So I didn't want to do that. I was like, if I'm going to make something, it's got to be its own thing. Now, then you can start to play with nods and Easter eggs, because I've used a bunch of lines and things in our version that I can, and that's part of the fun. That's the little nod to the audience to go, I see where that line comes from. I see what you're doing there. And obviously the big twist at the end of the film, it all makes sense why they're saying those lines. Which I'm not going to say the twist.
Can I just say the ending is epic? So if anyone's listening, you need to go watch it, because you just don't expect it. And the way that you've done it, it is very well put together, especially with the Indiana Jones inspiration as well as Star Wars mixed together. And then it's set about World War II, and it's just like you thought about everything. And I think that's what a good filmmaker is, rather than, like I say, making a fan film based on a character that's just fighting in the forest. It doesn't emotionally connect with anyone. There's no background story to it. It's just like people fighting in the woods. And I think the reason why it's got so much good press and a lot of people connect with it and really dig it is because you thought about everything. You thought about the background story. You thought about the time period. Why is this character doing this? What are they searching for? It's just well put together. Sorry to input there, but just for the people listening, like, it's like I say, you're speaking for yourself, I guess. You got to think about everything on filmmaking's about humans connecting with the character, because humans connect with humans.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't even have to be humans, I guess, because animation kind of defeats the object.
But still, we look for anything to connect to, you know? And because people are like, oh, this film's boring. It's like, well, boredom is an emotional feeling, It's like, well, why are you bored? Like, what? Because it's not grabbing you in a certain way. And it's like, it's sort of, you can see this, like, people when they start making short films or filmmaking obsess about, I need a drone, I need a stable, I need a camera, I need a lens, I need these toys, right? Because it's easy to, I say easy, but it's easier to get the toys and to make something look pretty than it is to sit with an actor and develop a performance or tell a story, and like, that's the wrong way to go about filming. And I fall into that trap. I did it with Star Wars. It's like, oh, I really want this thing, and you get obsessed about that thing, and you forget about what people are doing, which is watching people. And I think I've said this hundreds of times, but it's like, there's no point going to all the effort of making a film, and because it takes so much effort to get everything together, organizing all the gear, all the crew, all that stuff. Even if it's just you and your mates, like it's a lot to put together. But then if you're suddenly like, oh, I'm just gonna get my mum to be in it, no offense to mums out there who are actors, but like because like, but she's not an actor, and it's like, what's the point? Like, spend, and I say spend in inverted commas, as much effort, time, money, whatever it is, on the look of it as the performances and the actors. Because if you've got a cool story, or a story that is going to work, then actors are going to want to be in it. Like, that. I'm not saying you go and call up Tom Cruise, but people are always looking to be in things, especially for new filmmakers, because you don't know where the relationships lead. And I still work with actors on my very first films, my very first feature films. To this day, we have long-running relationships. Because there's a trust there, there's a shorthand, there's something. I feel like I went off on a tangent and I forgot your original
No,
question.
it
Oh,
was
it is.
great.
Yeah. But yeah, it is. You're right. Like people watch people, and or people animated, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
you need that emotional connection. So don't forget that when you're
100%.
making films.
100%. Well, thank you for your time. I just want to finish off with, well, we've got loads of advice in here, but just to sum it up, any advice for up-and-coming filmmakers such as myself and other people listening? What would you say, kind of in a condensed version?
I'm not very good at condensed. People already switched off.
As condensed as you make it.
My rambling. No, I mean, I think, and I think we covered a lot of points there that, that are all bits of advice are good to people. I think, you're not a filmmaker until you've made something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it comes down to that permission to fail. Like, don't be afraid to make something that's crap, right? Like that, because you're learning. And who knows, it might not be. And you know what? It probably isn't as bad as you think it is.
Yeah.
I made a bunch of things. I was like, we don't want to show it to people. But the best thing is showing people even work that you're not a fan of, you don't like, because you can always try and improve something. You can always try and make things better. That's just you wanting to grow as a filmmaker. But always show people your work. I'd say firstly, just get out there and make something. And honestly, it's so easy these days to go out and get something on your phone. Like, just go and shoot something. And then make sure you show it to people, because you don't know how people will respond or react to the thing that you've made, and you will see your work in a totally different way. And I'm not saying just show it to your friends. I'm like, put it into a film festival, just stick it online, because you never know who's going to see that thing. And you'll be surprised that people don't see the mistakes or the things in it. If you've listened to this rambling and gone, I'm telling a story that's not just gimmicky, and I've thought about, the character, and I've thought about how that emotionally connects to the audience, and I'm doing all that, then make sure people see it.
Yeah.
Because no one is going to pick up the phone for you. You've got to really put yourself out there. And yeah, it can be embarrassing, and yes, you can not feel. I still feel like unconfident when I make something and send something out, because you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
But that vulnerability is part of it.
We're human.
And it'll make you a better filmmaker. Like, honestly, it'll make you a better filmmaker by watching your film, even if you're cringing, watching your films with other people, because it'll either help you or it'll either make you realize the things that because all you see is mistakes, right? Or you always think, what did I get? People don't see that stuff. People don't see it at all, especially if you're emotionally connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, I've rambled as some extra advice, but great. I just think start making stuff, and don't feel like the first thing you need to make needs to win an Oscar, because it doesn't. And all these overnight successes that you hear about, of people going, whoa, they're just doing Jurassic World, like, but that guy's been grafting for a long time, before that, to get that break. You're only just hearing the big things. So, it's healthy to know that. It's healthy to know it's a journey.
100%. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'd love to stay in touch.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Email. But yeah, I appreciate your time once again. Really great talk.
You're welcome. And as I say, anyone listening, feel free to say hi. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. So, say hello. I like doing these things to try and, I don't know, help in some way.
Yeah.
Because it's good to give back,
100%. Well, take it easy, stay safe, and hope,
too, man.
Keep busy.
Yeah, you too. Speak later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.